Okay. Hi. I hope again my audio is clear. Not the best of the setting that I have to do a stream, but let's sort of get done with it. So just took the snap one of 24. Nothing too different from what it was last year. So fairly similar difficulty. Nothing really different, I would say, about the test. So if you look at the three sections, starting with the verbal section, I don't know. I personally found it to be slightly easier than last year, the verbal section, because typically the questions that they ask, uh, there will be some level of complexity at least, but it wasn't there this time. So the approach that I took was started with the verbal section, did about I think 4 or 5 minutes there. Ended up with about 12 attempts in the first round, and from there on moved to Quant, and then from there on did the first round of Quant, then moved to LR, did the first round there, and then sort of came back and did the remaining questions. So verbal was again fairly straightforward, nothing too complicated, I would say. Um, Except I think a couple of questions where you have to really think. Questions, I don't know. I think there was one question which was on something like Romeo Juliet and whether it is the metaphor or whatever things like that. So I think apart from that one question, I don't think anything was super difficult or something. Most of the people who have prepared would have been in a position to answer at least I would say 10 questions out of 15. A good score or a good score I would say is about 10 when it comes to the verbal section out of 15, right? If anybody has attempted more than that, let me know in the chat window. And I think yeah, so that's about it for verbal. Nothing much. I think I'll cover it in the detailed analysis. We'll have more number of the exact number of questions as well as to how many questions appeared from each of the area. And yeah, so moving on to the quant section. So quant, couple of questions were slightly lengthy, but otherwise I think most of the questions you could solve pretty much. I would say about 80% of the questions which were there. So if you look at 20 questions in quant, a decently prepared candidate would have been in a position to do about 15, 16 at least. There were a few questions which were lengthy. For example, there was one on, I think, sum of all the numbers which lie in a certain range, which are divisible by either 3 or 7. I think that one question was fairly lengthy, and there was one question on inverted cone, wherein the language wasn't that great. Honestly, it wasn't. It was slightly difficult to imagine what is going on. Some really good questions, like there was one on two circles that touch each other from outside with equal radius, and there's another circle which is basically touching these two circles, and there is a common tangent to all the three circles. So that was a very good question, I felt. And other questions, I think more or less, if you have been practicing snap level quant, I think you would have found a lot of direct questions. Some questions which definitely needed a little bit of thinking and calculations, but otherwise fairly straightforward affair. When it comes to the LR section, I think doing it in rounds is the best strategy because there'll be some questions where you get stuck. There was one particular question which was really arbitrary. For example, the question was something on bitter mango. So what's the code? I think very random to figure out in exam condition. After the condition exam condition, I think a lot of people will be able to sort of come up with some explanation of it. But during the exam condition, definitely a challenging thing because even I tried a lot of things, number of letters, number of vowels, and everything. Didn't really work out. So I was like, let's go, let go of this particular question. But otherwise, most of the LR was direct, uh, especially the coding decoding questions were fairly straightforward. Uh, uh, a lot of questions on which of the following is an implicit assumptions and things like that. But again, with proper reading, I think everybody would have been in a position to answer questions because the options weren't too close. Two questions, I think, on cause and effect. So, which is a cause, which is the effect? Are they independent causes? Are they independent effects? And things like that. Um, but yeah, overall, again, very similar to what it was last year, right? Um, Quant, I felt little difficult. Yeah, so there were a couple of questions wherein it was difficult, but not all the questions. So I would say 15, at least 14, 15 questions were either easy to moderate level. Few questions, yes, fairly challenging in terms of, again, depends on your comfort with quant. But yeah, at least the ones which is calculation intensive, I think you could have sort of left those questions. Um, okay, good attempt, overall cutoff. I think so very similar to last year. I don't see cutoff changing too much from last year. like a I think 99 was 45 point something last year, so 45.25 if I recall correctly. So very similar to that. And a 98 was somewhere around 43 point something or a 44, I guess. So I would say 44 plus puts you in a very good position for SIBM Pune in this particular paper. A 42 point something or a 43 plus puts you in a good position for SCMHRD. Right? So if you have attempted something like a 50 plus, I had one IMS student also next to me. I was talking to him, and he ended up attempting 54 questions. Somebody who had I think 45ish, 44 point something last year. So I think very similar to what it was last year. 45 attempts again is decent. If you have got everything correct, I think that's a solid performance. What is LOD of fonts? The question from Surbi. So overall, easy to moderate. That is the level because there was nothing which can be classified as a pure difficult question. Yes, depending on your comfort with whatever topics are there, maybe you could have found a few questions difficult, right? So, for example, let's say somebody must have found, let's say, a probability question difficult, correct? So it depends on what is your comfort. So if you're, let's say, comfortable with geometry, you would have found the tangent question easy. But for somebody who is not good at geometry, that question would have been difficult. Okay? Nikhil attempted 42, incorrect, most likely 4, round of marks 37, 38. Whether would I be able to clear cutoff for SMB Pune? I think it's a good idea to take snap 2 and 3 as well in that case because 37, 38 might be, and definitely 37, 38 will be low for SMB Pune. I don't want to give you any false hopes because if your attempts are 42, your obviously score would be less than that, right? And looking at the difficulty of this particular snap, I doubt if that would suffice for SIBM Pune. Okay. All right. Okay. Quant I felt little difficult. Okay, we already answered that. Mm, Aditya, Quant was lengthy and overall tougher in general. Took me 26, 27 minutes to attempt 14. No, Aditya, I think very similar to last year. So even last year it wasn't. There were few questions which were challenging, but most of the questions were easy to moderate kind of question. For example, this one also, right? Aditya, you mentioning the tiles one. You have to factorize quickly. If you're able to factorize that, I think 41 was one of the factors in that. If you get that part, then it becomes very easy. Okay? English, any new words from word power made easy? I don't remember word power made easy, so will not be able to comment on it. But uh, uh, compound words, there was a question on that. So antenna, anti, something, something. So there was one on compound words. There was one on that figures of speech, and yeah, there were the other question which was match the column. That was I think you have to find either synonym or antonym for the word which is given on the left hand side. Again, doable question because if you know, let's say out of 5 even 2 words, you would have got that particular thing. Clock का concept क्या है sir? Okay, so if it takes so many seconds to let's say strike 6, basically there are 5 intervals, right? So if you ask how many will it take to strike let's say 10, there are 9 intervals. So you basically do cross multiplication and find it out. Tiles question wrong. No, don't think it is wrong. Mm, okay, paper was easy or tough. Again, very difficult to classify it that way, but easy to moderate. Very similar to last year is what I would say. Geometry more or arithmetic more? Arithmetic more than geometry, I think. 53 attempts, I attempted 15 in fonts, might get 12 correct. Is it good? I'm hoping to get around 43, 44. Aditya, I think if your accuracy is fine in the other two areas, this should be okay. My attempt is 14, 23, 13. Decent attempt, but let's see because 14 in verbal is fine. You maybe lift one question there. 23 in LR again is solid. 13 in quant slightly on the lower side, but if your accuracy is good, you may be able to survive. Mocks में कितना score safe है for snap? In the mocks, you should be targeting at least a 40 to be in a fighting position, I would say. Cutoff, I think 45 for 45.25 was 99 percentile last year. So very similar to that is what I feel this time as well. Clock, please repeat. Okay, so the question was, I think it takes so many seconds for a clock, cuckoo clock, to strike 6. Then how much time will it take to strike 10? Right. So if it is striking 6 times, basically there are 5 intervals in between, and it has to strike 10 times, and there are 9 intervals in between. Then you calculate that way. Okay, 14, 23, 12 attempts. So I can see a lot of people are saying they have attempted very close to the number of questions in verbal, maybe a couple of questions you left there, and even in LR. But the real differentiator then is quant, right? How many questions were you able to attempt in quant? So let's see. SIBM Bangalore is around 92 percentile, 92, 93 roughly. and that should be somewhere in the ballpark of 39 point something. But definitely more than 37, 36, 37 for sure. Because it's not a very difficult paper, right? You have to understand that Snap isn't something that is very difficult as a test. It's just that people who are good with speed, it favors them. Right? Okay, climate change, we answer. I'm not too sure. I think there was one suggestion out of it which was very arbitrary, so that was straight away out. But others, I'm not very sure. Log root x. I don't know. I think it was value of x being 100. Uh, I'm not very sure, but I think 100 was what it was. Okay. Is cousin and second cousin same? Uh, I don't know. I mean, I'm not very sure. I think cousin is what it is. I felt IMS mocks were very easy compared to actual Snap, especially Quant. Not really. See, I did the Snap live solving of Snap 1, right? I had a 52 point something there, and I felt it was very, very similar to last year's difficulty. So I wouldn't really say that it is more difficult or less difficult. See, ultimately, it's relative with success that matters. You should be taking multiple snaps if you're somebody who is very serious about SIBM Pune and other colleges, which is what we have been saying for a very long time. That you never know the how the difficulty is going to be of the individual snap. Always better to take multiple attempts so that even if let's say one test for some reason you find it difficult, in the other at least you are able to perform. Okay. Uh, Okay, log is 10. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly. So either x was 100 and then root x is 10. So whatever, something like that. What was the angle in 5 p.m. question? 555, right? So 150 plus 2.5. I think 152.5 was the answer there. Were the questions asked in the pattern of last year's paper? Yeah, very similar to that. Okay. Cool. I think we have more or less covered quite a bit in the first take. I hope this has helped you. Overall review of the test, nicely conducted. No technical glitches anywhere, anytime at the center at least. Very, very smooth. In fact, I think I met a lot of students, but a lot of students recognized me, and they also the invigilator shouted at me because I once the test started, not the test started, but once you start reading those instructions, right? You have 10 minutes. I got up from my seat basically, so they kind of shouted at me. But yeah, it was like a nice overall experience. Similar to last year, nothing, no major surprises as such. Stay calm, make sure that you solve questions very very quickly. For anybody who is maybe about to enter the 4:30 slot, please take care of your speed. Uh, Go very very fast. Don't sit on something for a very long time. If you're not able to solve it, move on to something else, right? And do it in rounds. That always helps as a strategy. Okay. All right. Cool. Great. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you all of you at 5 o'clock in the overall detailed live analysis session, and we'll talk about the individual questions then. Okay. All right. Bye everyone. See you.